Hi, Robert. Good morning.
Hello,
Well,
Howard.
good
Good
day.
morning.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've I'm in the process of changing my car, which is a joy. But I had a bicycling accident the other day, so I'm mending from that. So the ups and downs of life in the countryside.
To add to that, are we in the middle of a leadership crisis?
Well,
Now,
it,
there's our topic for today with a bit of hope.
yes, gosh, the whole Starmer thing is fascinating. It really is, from the perspective, regardless of politics, from that perspective of, are you into leadership as a subject, as a discipline, as something to learn from? It was kind of like, I believe it was a previous Labour politician, might have been Tony Blair, who said, you will always see the the destruction of a prime minister early on in their prime ministership because there are telltale signs. And I do wonder whether the the vase, the Ming vase, being carried across the room, and that metaphor that was used to describe Starmer, the safe pair of hands, was also his undoing.
Yeah, I've got another thought on Starmer. Yeah, the Ming vase, but I mean, Starmer's, good lawyer. We don't doubt that. But this comes up against what I think a lot of leaders have problems with. They get to their positions because they're technically competent. But they're not that technical competence these days is not enough. It really isn't. So, what sort of things do we think leaders should have? I mean, in my view, he's not a very good communicator.
Completely agree. I mean, one shouldn't require necessarily charisma and to recognize the effectiveness potentially of a leader, in that good to great work, that reference to what was referred to as level 5 leadership, where the
Mm.
author, remind me who was the author. Good to
Well,
great.
good
Colin.
man.
He was saying you shouldn't need, and indeed there's lots of corporate examples of hugely effective, in his terms, level 5 leaders that are not charismatic. But I
No.
think in politics, perhaps you do need some sense of not just what the message is, but how the message is delivered.
Yeah, I mean, looking politics aside, though, if we just look at it, I mean, he's the leader of a party. Party's an organization. So, in my view, I don't think he communicated very well with the people in his organization.
No, he didn't. And he didn't engage with them sufficiently.
Yeah. So, if we take a lesson that's transferable to business, the ability to communicate, not charismatically, but with your people, extremely important. The thing
Some
is,
authenticity, I think.
yeah, but I don't think, I mean, again, he's a bit like a robot when he speaks. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't, he
Yeah.
doesn't score high on emotional intelligence for me either. I don't know
Yeah.
what you think.
Well, here it's what's interesting is some of the stories have started to come out about what it was like to be in the Starmer government. He found it difficult, and I also hear this is a criticism leveled at Burnham. Starmer found it difficult to say no to people.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you've got to simply, you've got to pick one side or the other and stick to it.
He couldn't make tough decisions. And again, that's when we look at the good leaders, they don't have to be outright bullies. but they know what the decision is and they're prepared to stick with it, where he just vacillates and changed his mind. I have to say, my biggest fear of Burnham is exactly the same.
This is what I've heard. What I thought, I listened to Burnham's speech yesterday, and I thought, oh my goodness, he is at least laying out a vision, and he's fleshing that. He's obviously not giving us all the detail that we might want, but he's given us elements of detail that clearly shows he's thought it through, and that there is a kind of coherence to it. When he's talking about place-based collaboration, for example, he's actually talking about something quite systemic, pulling together, for instance, universities and industrial regeneration and local authorities, and saying you all need to work together to build something where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and do it place by place. It's kind of like it resonated, because I thought, for the first time, with someone giving a bigger picture that's connected, joined up, multidisciplinary. When Starmer, it was all separate. It was all disjointed, unconnected, not joined up. And I wonder whether that might be an important difference between the two.
We'll find out, won't we? But I think that comes down to what I think is really important these days. Leaders need to know the system. And I don't think Starmer knew the system of his own party very well. And I certainly don't think he knew the system of politics very well.
No, indeed not. And if you may just indulge me, Howard, because you knew this would happen at some point in this conversation, I want to bring out a left brain, right brain distinction. He's just so left brain. And for people listening, there is a distinction to give. Left brain is about abstraction. It's about disconnected apprehension of things separately in a disconnected way. Apprehension in the good sense of, capturing it. The right brain, however, is critical because it's about the whole. It's about the entire system. It's about the story that knits things together. It's about comprehension in its entirety. So you've got comprehension, right brain, apprehension, left brain. There was nothing that Starmer said that gave me any sense that he had both ways of attending, left brain and right brain. It was always left brain, and therefore disconnected. And that's no place to be when you're a prime minister.
No, but it's no place to be as a leader.
No place to be as a leader.
And it sort of brings me on to sort of hospital issues we've had that are sort of.
Yeah.
But you see, again, a friend of mine, he ended up as a medical director of a hospital, not by design, but by default, because they voted him in when he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And as he said, I'm a doctor. I've never had any training in leadership, and now I'm expected to lead on an extremely important, critical side of a hospital where I'm going to go cover all sorts of specialities I know absolutely nothing about other than my own little area. And again, this is a problem I think many businesses have.
Yes.
They promote people because they're very good in a certain area.
Yeah.
But then they get to this top position and they freeze.
Yeah.
It's like rabbits in the headlights. So I don't think we're very good at selecting leaders. But coming back to our crisis, I think what we're starting to unravel are loads of crises across our country in every way.
Yeah, just look at, like Thames Water, for example. Look at the NHS maternity scandals all over the country. We have a leadership cadre that is so wrapped up in the concern for reputation of the organization that they're supposedly leading, that other balancing or alternative perspective, which is duty of candor, which is allowing people across the organization to speak up, it's non-existent.
Well, see, it's interesting you talk about speak up because I'm coming back to your book now. Wonderful books
Fantastic.
on wonderful
What
book
took
on
you
a
so long? What took you so long?
oh, well, there you go. So are our employees afraid to speak up? And I definitely think they are. And I mean, you can take us through it better than I can, but I mean, I love the sort of the way that you've put on managerial control on one axis, and psychological safety on the other. And of
Yes.
course, most people will just rather take psychological safety, and not challenge. So, you call people who are low on managerial control and psychological safety ghost ship. Do you want to take over? Because I mean, I think, when we come to it, this is really quite good.
Yes. So, are our employees afraid to speak up? And as you say, two axes. And the whole point about the breaking open the boxes is it's about not choosing one axis or the other. It's about how you reconcile. And that's what leaders need to do. And leaders in these organizations need to reconcile creating psychological safety and managerial control, being in control. And low on both, ghost ship is like the ship adrift, not going anywhere, not moving with purpose, who's in control, as opposed to high on psychological safety, but still low on managerial control. That's the pleasure cruise. It's kind of not challenging anyone. Everyone has a say, but who's in charge? And, and I think that's equally damaging. But look at the situation where you have high managerial control and low psychological safety. These are these organizations where it's like a pirate ship. And if you question the leaders, you'll walk the plank because there's no psychological safety. Um, and of course, the better reconciled position is high on managerial control, high on psychological safety, and we call that the flotilla.
Hmm.
So this is where you have a group of ships moving together with a common purpose. Yes, there is, distribution of leadership. There is an ability for both everyone to contribute, but know their place in the bigger picture and to move forward together. That's the flotilla. And I think we see organizations that are, the employees are afraid to speak up because there isn't psychological safety. So it's a pirate ship.
So where do you think the NHS is in this with at the moment?
I think we've seen a number of instances, and both Baroness Amos today and I should have looked up the name of the person that did was it Nottingham Maternity
Yeah.
Trust report a few days ago, that where there were instances where experienced nurses, perhaps inexperienced nurses, midwives spoke up and were shot down. It was the equivalent of walking the plank. So the concern for being in control, and there's another grid in the book, which is, are we covering up? Which is
I was going to mention that one.
ah, which is about balancing duty of candor with reputational concern. And both those grids apply to the maternity scandals up and down the country. because not only are people afraid to speak up, when they do, they're shot down, and leaders seek to cover up because they don't want to know about the negative stories. They don't want to know about the big risks that they are supposedly leading and not doing anything about.
So here we come down to Carillion, we can go back to with construction. I know they built a lot of hospitals, but I mean, Carillion went bust and they were less than honest with what was going on.
Here we have a situation where, and I think it does apply to the maternity situation, you've got to ask the question over, this is a situation of months, if not years, of verifiable poor performance. And the unnecessary levels of infant death, of issues during pregnancy and giving birth, you'd have hoped that there would be some way in which the Care Quality Commission would be across the data, that the Department of Health would be across the data, and that there would be some sense of, hang on, that we should have things flashing amber and red. But it seems that everyone was totally unaware of what was going on.
But this goes back historically. Thalidomide, Windrush.
Post
I
Office
was
Horizon.
going to say Post Office Horizon. You know, there's nothing new in any of this. So we're talking about, are we in a crisis of leadership? Yes, because we've got the stories that we could learn from, but we don't. I mean, I see this week with, you know, the shift to the north that the HS2 extension between Birmingham and Manchester's back on the rail for
Yeah.
a pun. You know, what have we learned from that? You know, the lessons learned from that. So are we in a crisis of leadership? Definitely yes. So what is the problem? Are we poor at making decisions? Are we defensive? Do we, we want to, are we inconsistent in the way that we tackle these things? So when we look at crisis of leadership, what are the real problems?
Well, I have a few based on this conversation, really. I think there's a few things I'd like to say. What Baroness Amos has said is there's too much variability in maternity performance around the country. There's great examples, great experience for mothers and fathers, and wonderful stories of where the maternity hospitals are performing. And then you can be in a neighbouring maternity hospital and it's failing. Trust, neighbouring trust. It seems to me that the Care Quality Commission, if they're the ones that are supposed to be making this variability in performance visible, is too slow, it's too sclerotic, it's not demanding much quicker response, and the DHS is simply not seeing the entire picture with data.
So we come now to then a crisis of leadership in that area. So is that bad people who are behaving badly or doing a bad job? Is it people who are acting like Peter Principle, or way above their level of competence? Or is it there's no checks on them?
I think it's I think it's that they are not managing the system. We're hearing there's so much systemic failure. It's because leaders are not stepping back and saying this system is broken, and they're not acting on predictive data. You and I are both old, both old. Who have come across the balanced business score.
Oh,
Now,
well, what a wonderful tool.
yeah, and it taught us that we needed data points that would be predictive of future performance. It seems to me that there are too many organizations in all aspects of public service, and I think in private sector as well, that have lost the lessons of track a complete holistic view of the performance of your organization to understand the entire system. What is leading, what is lagging, what is predictive, what is history. Everyone is just acting on partial views of history and not even acting on that in the case of the DHS. So,
But I
you know,
think it's
it's
I
systemic and it's
well, I'm gonna be controversial. I'd say we got some pretty weak, poor leaders in those places. And one thing I liked about the Minister of Defence, Healy, he stood up and said, "Look, sorry, this is not going to be enough."
yes.
And, rather than try to lead something he knew would fall apart on him, the system would collapse, he had the courage to step forward. Now, how many other leaders would do that? Not many in political
Mm,
terms. I
mm,
mean, Carnes followed ship because he had to in a way, but
yeah.
it was Healy who set the tone. And actually, it would appear many people have respected Healy for that.
Yeah. I suspect we might even see him back in some way, shape, or form because of the respect that he got.
Yeah. But so this crisis of leadership, what do we do about it? I mean, we're still selecting leaders, and we're not going to be able to do that today, but we're still selecting leaders on old ways of thinking, not
Yeah.
new ways of thinking.
I think key. Well, you've
Yeah.
summed it up. That needs
Okay.
to be that needs to be our next topic, I think. You know, there are hidden aspects to leadership that we're touching on in this conversation. The need to engage ways of attending that's as much right brain as left brain, to be predictive, to have an element of super forecasting, to to understand systems and how systems work and how you intervene in systems. We still have such a, I was going to say 20th century, but I wonder if it's 19th century perspective on on great men and women and their character.
Yeah, but I still think that people are really important. I mean, we're living in this AI world, aren't we? You were mentioning to me earlier you want to write a book on it. I don't want to douse water on it, but it's interesting. Have you seen what Ford have learnt in America on their production lines?
No.
Well, they sacked a lot of their senior people to make way for AI. They now sacked AI to recruit 900 white-haired people because they say the decisions need to be made by highly experienced and knowledgeable people.
That's what my
Uh,
book will be about.
So it's actually nothing about AI then. um, I mean, so it's an interesting theme to end on
Yeah.
because AI is not going to get rid of leadership. AI is actually going to make leadership ever, ever more important because
It is.
And so there is, for all of those who are listening, don't worry, you have a future. It's just you're going to have to adapt. And, I'd love to speak about adaptive capability, but that's another topic another day.
We've got so many topics because we should
Yeah.
probably also look at AI specifically,
Yeah.
actually.
But anyway, I think we're probably sort of coming to a point where you want to get out to your car, and we've probably talked enough. But for those people, get the book. It's called Breaking Open the Boxes. Page 305 for RI employees afraid to speak up, and it's page 377 for Are We Covering Up? There we go.
Well
Don't
done. Thank you, Howard.
I'm not the author,
Thank
but
you, Howard.
it's a great book and I use a lot of them.
Yeah.
it's made me think about many more that I've created that Robert would probably criticize. But there we go.
It's a book for those interested in resolving dilemmas. And my goodness, we have loads of dilemmas out and about at the moment.
We haven't even actually today gone even into a leadership one. Those are other areas. So
Oh gosh, there are so many
yeah,
in this book.
but don't give it away. We'll come back to it. So thanks for everyone for listening. If you want to contact us, by all means, just put howard@leadersmeets.com and I'll pass it on to Robert. Just one center. Please participate. Look out.
Thank
Okay. Thanks for the time. See you again soon, Robert.